Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the British and Irish Eagles podcast, brought to you by Passion Avenue and Loch Lomond Whiskies. And after the worst technical difficulties I've ever experienced doing these podcasts, on the final attempt. So if you're hearing this was me at my wit's end at 11 o'clock at night, starting a podcast that should have started an hour earlier. We're going to be here this week to do the draft review, and luckily Mick has persevered with me and is still hanging around because he knows that I need the moral support right now to get through this episode of the podcast. Thanks for joining me, Mick, and I really hope this is the final attempt we need to get through this draft, because I'm really looking forward to getting into the prospects themselves that we did pick up. Obviously, several months of build-up from yourself specifically and us and all around the NFL, analysing players, statistics, measurables, results, film, everything all comes to a head last week, or over a week ago now, and all the players are now settled nicely with their little teams, getting ready for their voluntary camps, getting their heads measured, getting their jerseys on. So I thought it'd be a good time, Mick, to get together to go through what the Eagles, or what Howie ended up doing. And as we both know, and what we'll get into, is that the Eagles did not disappoint once again, coming up with some trades on the night, some out of the blue picks. Although, you know, if you're speaking to Liam, you'd probably say they weren't so out of the blue with the first round pick. But Mick, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining me. Give me your initial thoughts, just how you felt after the draft. You know, are you up at there thinking, yes, Howie smashed it yet again, or are you sort of a little bit more middle of the road where you've got some problems, you've got some issues, but overall you're happy, or are you just head in your hands? Talk to me.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be on the episode, Phil, and talk about, like you say, all these guys who we've spent a few months poring over, you know, looking at every little detail that we can, trying to get insights from the most unlikely news sources that we can pull together, just to get that little nugget of information, that little nugget of gold that makes you think, you know, I really like this guy. It just puts you over the edge a little bit to like one guy over another. And when he doesn't fall onto the Eagles draft board, you get so disappointed on the night. That's one of the things about the draft that I love and that I hate as well, Phil, is when the Eagles are on the clock. There's a guy that I love, I want. I've been watching him. I've been watching the YouTube highlights, or I've watched them throughout the college season. You know, I've been watching these college interviews, and how he goes, nah, fuck that guy. Let's take this guy that I've never heard of at all, that I'll need to now go and deep dive into. So that, you know, it's fun in a way. I mean, I think the draft is the most fun part of the off-season calendar, and yeah, I can't wait to get into all these guys that Howie's picked up. For an overall thoughts, you know, I see a lot of the like Howie season, how he smashed it again. How does he keep doing this? I'm not quite there with this draft class. I think he did make a lot of good picks, obviously, particularly early on and late on as well. I think in the middle of the draft is sort of where it suffered a little bit. We'll come on to the individual prospects and where and how I think it fell, because obviously when we're talking about, you know, the draft board and consensus drafts, we're so quick to jump on Howie and give him praise for when a guy's falling down the board and he takes him, you know, well, before consensus, after consensus, so he steals a player, essentially. We're so quick to do that. But when he, you know, selects a player who was further behind in consensus, when you know, when he reaches for a player, we don't really dig him up for that, and I'm going to dig him up for that, Phil. I'm going to dig him up for that in this podcast.
Well, that's why I got you on the podcast, man. I wouldn't want it to be just me and Liam gleefully praising Howie, as you've just said, Howie season and all that. And I think I'd probably generally agree. The token quarterback in the middle of the draft, which some people are going to draw conclusions from, others are going to sort of dismiss it, and felt a little bit early if they're just picking a guy just to kick the tires on something to see if it fits into the Eagles' future or release him after camp. But like I said, we'll get into the individual prospects. But as for the draft night itself, or draft night one, as is always the main night and everything like that. I don't know about you, Mick, but I had my setup, my draft setup going, which involved a double duvet, several pillows, and an alarm clock, so that I could fall asleep if I needed to, or wake up for the Eagles pick, or go straight to sleep as soon as the Eagles were picked. Did you did you sleep on the sofa, or did you manage to sort of watch it on your phone?
I was watching it in the living room. I was on the sofa. Didn't have a duvet right enough. I had a plate of wings, so I made a bit
Nice.
of a night of it. A few whiskies, of course, a few Loch Lomans. um, it was a good night. It was a good night. But I realised, Phil, the next day is just so difficult.
It's
See
just
when you've got the kids, and it's just relentless. And the next day, your eyes are just nipping out your head because you've had no sleep at all. And Liam's laughing from the other side of the pond because he
8 o'clock
watched
in
it
the
at like
evening.
8 o'clock in the evening. Well rested, all that. But that's why I do day one. But day two, I can't stay up for day two. I can't do it 2 nights in a row. I'm too old for that now. I'm 40 this year, if I can believe it. So,
No,
um,
I'm joining you next year. But yeah, well, that's why I got a duvet and slept on the sofa, because I was like, well, at least I can kind of just fall asleep because if I need to. But I actually stayed up for at least for quite a few picks on day two as well. I think I decided that this year I was going to make a bit more of an effort. I didn't have the wings for some reason, but I wanted to make myself comfortable because sometimes just staying up. I mean, the year before I was actually away in a hotel I had an important exam the following day, and I remember having my laptop with me in the room on draft night, just waking up periodically just to peer at the laptop, see where we were on the clock, and then go back to sleep again. And I found that kind of worked, so I thought I'd apply that sort of at home so that I could get the best out of the draft. But yeah, so all right. Well, we will, like I said, we'll get onto the prospects in a second, but I want to just discuss the trade that happened on the night, and also the trade that's coming up in about 4 weeks' time, according to the NFL media. But the Greenard trade. So you said in the middle of the draft it was a bit hit and miss. Well, obviously the reason why the middle of the draft for the Eagles was a little bit iffy was partly because we gave away two picks to move up, but then we also gave up a third round and a third round next year to pick up Greenard. So we gave up 2026 third round picks. We gave up pick 98 and a 2027 third round pick, and we got pick 244 back in the seventh round, which we used for pick up Cole Wisniewski, safety at Texas Tech. And we immediately signed him to a 100 mil 4 year extension with 50 million fully guaranteed. It's been kind of feel like it was coming for a while, and a lot of people touted it for being a draft night kind of trade, and it ended up going down typical Howie fashion, quite almost like it was planned at a specific moment. It seemed quite instant. Um, what's your initial take? Like, are you a big fan of Greenard? Are you glad that he's finally in the building, or are you kind of indifferent to that, especially considering the capital that we gave up in the third round this year and next year? What are your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Phil, I wasn't happy about the Greenard trade at all. When it first landed, well, I woke up to the news obviously because I didn't stay up for day two, so this happened overnight in the UK, and I woke up. I was about to check my phone, like, oh, who have we picked up on day two?
Mm.
Dead excited to dig in because you know me, Phil. I've been poring over this for months. I said at the start of the podcast, I want to know um, who the newest Eagles are coming out of college, and to find out, and forget that, forget picking guys. We just trade our picks and get this guy that's been on the sort of periphery or been on the radar for a few months now. Why not do that deal weeks ago? And maybe it would have been more exciting then. It just kind of fell a little bit flat for me, just for that reason, because I was just expecting something new, and because it had already been spoken about, it was sort of expected and not really new. It didn't feel new. Um, this is, I mean, personally speaking, obviously, like I think I've come round on the trade a little bit since it happened. Just on the initial day, but just like the initial thoughts, I just didn't like it. I thought, why are we paying a guy who, he's 29 years old? I think going into this season, we've given him a 4-year deal. I'm like, well, I mean, pass rushers is he going to lose a step? As he turns 30, goes over the hill a little bit? Why are we paying this guy when we let Jalen Phillips leave the building? Just this same off season, and he got, I wouldn't say it was a significantly higher amount that the Panthers paid him. It was 120 million that he
Yeah,
eventually
5 million a
got
year
over.
more roughly.
Yeah, five million or more, which is, I don't think that's a lot when you've got Howie Cook in the books. So he could definitely sweep.
Also, if you've got it's a better the devil you know in a way. Not saying Greenard's not going to work out, but you had a guy in the building who was working, who'd fit in the team, wanted to be there. That 5 million is sort of mitigated in that, so you're now paying 5 million less. But if the guy doesn't work out, it's a bit of a disaster. I'm sure it'll work out though.
Well, a guy that needs to learn the scheme as well, because as you said, Phillips had that time to bed in. He already knew Fangio from working with him in Miami, and and he's younger as well. So I mean, he's got more time. I know he did have the injury history, but he was still relatively injury free whilst he was with us. So I just didn't understand. I just didn't really understand it too much. But as I said,
Mm.
I've taken advice for people who know what they're talking about more than I do. Let's just say,
You've been
just
you've,
from
you've been
listening to.
impressed by his media, or at least the social media appearances or the
Oh
interviews he's
yes, I
had.
forgot about that. I forgot about that. Yes, he had his initial interview with the Eagles media, and I thought he came across very, very well. I liked a lot of what he had to say. I like how he carried himself. Um, yeah, I think that interview was a 10 out of 10 for me. It totally changed how I felt about him in the moment. So there was that, which thank you for reminding me of that. But I completely forgot about that. If you haven't checked that out, anyone that's listening, I do think you should go and check it out, even if you're not sure about the trade like I was. Um, and as well as that, Phil, there was listening to people around the NFL grading the trade. Everyone has to be a winner and loser of every trade that's ever made in the NFL, and listen to not just Eagles reporters but national reporters, and they're all saying this is a great move for the Eagles. They're getting a guy who is so explosive on the edge, and he can set the edge as well. So he's going to be valuable in the run game. He's going to be valuable as a pass rusher. So this guy's going to be on the field for every down. And you know how Fangio likes to just, well, he doesn't like to rotate very much, let's just say.
Mm.
So this is a guy who's an immediate starter and an immediate upgrade uh, on our current room on the edge. Because did we pick up an edge in the draft? We didn't pick up an edge in the draft. So immediate need, definitely immediate need. I think we spoke about it, a few podcasts ago about where do the Eagles need to look for in this draft. We need, you know, potentially a wide receiver to replace AJ Brown. We need a future tackle for replacing
Mm.
Lane Johnson, and we need someone to replace Jalen Phillips on the edge. And how he goes out and makes that trade. So fair enough. I'm
Yeah.
excited now to see what Greenard can do because, as I said, you look at the stats and you're thinking, is he declining because there was very few sacks last year? But you dig a little deeper into that and you find out he was carrying a shoulder knock, which he had surgery I think in the off season, which from the interviews that I've heard is recovery is going well on that front. And his pressures didn't really suffer last year. It was mostly just his sack number. So he is still getting after the quarterback. He still
Mm.
does have that step up explosion. He's still the player that collected, the however many double digit sacks it was the year previous. So if he can get back up to that double, I can't say that. What is wrong with me? The
Double
double
digits.
digit sack. If he can get back up to that, then yeah, this Eagles defense could be nasty, very nasty.
Yeah, so he had 12 sacks in 2024 and a career best 12 and a half for the Texans in 2023. Like you said, declining performance last year, but you kind of mitigated that quite nicely. We did pick up another edge going down the draft picks, pick 252, Keyshawn James Newby edge from New Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's a reason why he wasn't on the tip of your tongue, being a seventh round pick from a college that, well, college or a state. Depends on. Never heard of New Mexico. College before. So yeah, he's going to be a camp body. He's going to be coming in to compete with Greenard. But you got Nolan Smith, you got Jelix Hunt, and you got Ebikiti as well. So yeah, there's a lot to play with there. It could all work out. But again, I think this is another situation where Howie's sort of hoping that it all comes together, but there are no guarantees in this sport. So it's going to be an interesting development in camp, seeing how explosive he is early in camp, because I think all eyes are going to be on it because it's the big blockbuster trade of the draft. You can put it on par with
Mm.
the first round pick surprise, going wide receiver. So it's going to be interesting once we get to camp, seeing the ESP stats of Jalen Hurts. Looking forward to all
Oh
those
god,
coming
yeah,
in
of
when
course.
is
The
a
ESP
bit
camp
tongue in cheek.
stats, I can't,
And
can
it's
hardly wait.
A plus because he threw 20 passes to guys not in pads. Um, right. Well, we've spent enough time talking about that. I did want to talk about AJ Brown, but what I think we'll do is we'll talk about Makai Lemon first because that's the positive. That's the definitive information we have. He is in the building. We can talk about what it means for AJ Brown as well afterwards. But yeah, so the whole story, as we all will know by now, we've watched all the repeated draft night videos. I've seen about 15 different angles of the same video. It's that enjoyable to watch. But the Eagles traded up to get Makai Lemon at pick 20 from pick 23. And there was a bit of an eventful trade situation at the same time with it because we had traded yet again with the Dallas Cowboys, and those that will have a good memory will remember that's exactly how we managed to get Devontae Smith over jumping over the Giants this time. So dealing with a rival to screw another rival to pick a player that no one was really expecting the Eagles to get, partly because he wasn't going to drop to pick 20. People were expecting him to go between 10 and 16, I think. People expected the Rams to pick him up, but he fell. So Howie jumped into action. And Mick, your thoughts on exactly what went down with the Steelers and that. So obviously Makai had a phone call. Phone call comes up. It's a Pennsylvania number, but it's the GM of the Steelers, Omar Khan. Starts speaking to him because the Steelers thought that the Cowboys were going defense, and naturally they were going to be left with their pick of Makai Lemon. Supposedly was their top guy on their board. And during the phone call, the Eagles jump in. Howie swoops in typical Howie fashion to spoil the party and completely surprise everyone and be the talking point on draft night. I think Ian Rappaport was reeling for hours after that one. But is it? I don't think it's ever happened before, Mick. Not in recent memory, where a player's been on the phone to a team about to expecting to draft him to be usurped by a team. Not since the movie Draft Day have I seen such shenanigans in that regard. But tell me what are your thoughts on the whole situation, and then just give me your overall thoughts on the Eagles picking up Makai Lemon.
All right, and whilst I do that, Phil, right, I want you to tell me who would play Howie Roseman in the movie. Like you mentioned, Draft Day. Who would play Howie Roseman in the reenactment movie of jumping the Steelers there to grab Lemon? Now you think about that, and
Mm.
I'll take the reins just now. I love it. I love that kind of thing. That just makes the draft even more exciting and more fun. Is Howie Roseman just doing Howie Roseman things, and it had to be him. It had to be us. It had to be the Eagles. It couldn't have been anyone else. It couldn't have been the Jaguars GM. Um, you know, jumping over another team and sniping a player. Nobody cares about that. That's not funny. You know, it's always funny if it happens in Philly, and it's always Philly. Always us that do it. As you said, you go back to the Devontae Smith draft, and we've got the New York fan going, you know, those
Leave us
the
alone.
famous words. Leave us alone. Leave us alone. I want to see the Pittsburgh. I want to see the Pittsburgh fans given the leave us alone. I need to find videos of that. Of their fans. I had a quick look at the Steelers UK podcast fan base thing on Twitter the following day after the draft, just to sort of gauge their reaction, and they were fuming. Phil, they were absolutely livid that
Inject
they
it.
got. Yeah, their GM got absolutely humiliated on draft day, and they didn't get the player that they wanted. And that's just icing on the cake for such a premium pick and a premium player like Makai Lemon. We spoke about it on the podcast before the draft, and we joked about it, Phil. We weren't even really being serious when we talked about drafting Makai Lemon, because we're like, oh, maybe we'll pick up a wide receiver in the first round. And we're talking about Casey Concepcion. We're maybe talking about Omar Cooper. We weren't talking about Makai Lemon. We were joking about Makai Lemon because, as you say, he was expected to go somewhere between 10 and 16 in this draft. I had him a lot higher than 20 on my draft board, and so did most draft analysts. So that's an absolute steal for the Eagles. And this, like you say, this guy's just got all. He was the Blinkoff Award winner as well in college, and if you just look at the previous list of who's won that award, the prestigious wide receiver award in college: Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison Jr., Travis Hunter. This guy was just picking up all the awards because he was the focal point of Lincoln Riley's USC offense, and they like to move him around the formation. Yeah, he played a lot in the slot, but he can also play out wide, and maybe not majorly at the next level. He's not AJ Brown, so if you're thinking, this guy's AJ Brown's replacement, yes, in a way, but not like for like. He's not. He doesn't play like AJ Brown does. He does have fight in him. He will block. He's a willing blocker. He can get physical with receivers. He's got great hands. He will catch every ball that's thrown his way. But he's just not a like for like. He's more like a sort of. I've seen it comped before, like the JSN type. He's a slot receiver, but he can do a lot more than just be a quote unquote slot guy. As long as he's used in the right way. So it's a great pick for, I think, for two people. Jalen Hurts is a great pick for Jalen Hurts. It's a great pick for Sean Mannion. Because he's got a guy that he can move about the formation, that will complement what Devontae Smith can do, as well as his own. And Jalen. What's the biggest question this offseason about Jalen? Can he throw over the middle? Can he handle a huge passing offense? And we're going to find out, because that's how he's done. How he's taken this guy in the first round of the draft, so he's an immediate starter. Because as you said, AJ Brown's definitely going to be traded now. Can assume that. We'll come on to that. But this guy's an immediate starter, and there's nowhere to hide anymore. The offense, the passing offense from the offensive coordinator has to be 10 times better than it was last year. And Jalen Hurts should improve as well with this guy in hand.
Yeah. So obviously the trade itself to move up was quite expensive. I mean, my appreciation and knowledge of draft capital and what it costs to move around, and especially in the first round, isn't great. But 2 4th-round picks feels like an in-division tax from the Cowboys. They knew what they were doing, and hats off, to be honest, to the Cowboys. They had a pretty good draft. Their war room seemed a little bit more on it than they normally are, in my opinion, anyway. But 2 4th-round picks, admittedly. One of the 4th-round picks was the comp pick for Milton Williams, and I think the other one, I can't remember what the other one is off the top of my head, but essentially it turns out that the 2 4th-round picks aren't a huge loss. And how he loves to do that, he loves to accumulate comp picks so that when he does these trades, people can start making the argument on his behalf, like, Eagles basically got traded up for free because these picks didn't mean anything to they weren't Eagles' own picks. They got them for free and they've used them well. Do you agree? Do you think it's a bit of an expensive trade, Mick, to give up 2 4th round picks in the same draft to move up essentially 3 spots just to get your guy?
It is and it isn't. I think you're playing maybe a little bit of premium because it's in division rival, so you're going to give up a little bit more. That's to be expected, sort of. But if that's the guy on your draft board, or that's the guy that you want, just go and get him. I don't mind that sort of aggressiveness on draft night, especially on day one, and especially in a draft that doesn't have a lot of blue chip talent. It just doesn't. And if a guy like Makai Lemon, who, as we said, projected really, really high, he and not only projected, he's done it. He has the production, on field production, which I think is more valuable than anything else. Like, you see a lot of draft guys and they're projecting things and saying, yeah, he's been good on the college level. When he goes to the NFL, he's going to take off, sort of thing. I like guys that have already taken off. I like guys that have broken out at the college level, and then they're just coming into the NFL to show what they can do already. They've already established that they can do, because that for me has a higher ceiling than projecting what they may or may not be able to do. So for Howie to then jump up a couple of picks to grab him, I'm absolutely fine with that, Phil. Honestly, that's no issue.
I mean, yeah, I accept that, and I think ultimately you are probably right. I think when it's a division rival, and especially a division rival in the Cowboys, so arguably our closest rival over the last decade or so, at least, in terms of going for the division, you're giving them an extra 2 picks in the current draft, and they already kind of established. They picked up their guy. Who was it they picked up? Was it Downs that they picked up?
Yes,
Was that someone else? Yeah, it was Downs. So
they
they'd already got
picked up Downs and then Lawrence. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're giving a little bit of ammunition to your rival, and when they've shown to be sort of not playing silly with house money as they usually do, you're given two sort of decent picks. But you are right as well to say that the depth isn't there. So I think ultimately I'll agree with you that the Eagles, or at least Howie, has looked at it from a low risk point of view, going, yeah, I'm giving them a bit of extra capital to play with, but this draft isn't the draft to be playing with that capital, as we'll get onto in the when we move on shortly now to the AJ Brown situation. But just quickly before we do, for those that read the articles that Mick was producing and the Road to the Draft podcast that Mick was doing, he came up with his patented Howie matrix for grading the picks. So it's like I said, Howie. So H is sort of the health or the high value, O being the on-field production, W being what he brings to the team, I intangibles, and then E being Eagles fit. So just quickly talk us through your how you came up with your scores and what they were for this pick, which was, for those listening, done before we picked up. So this is not blowing smoke up his ass. This is what Mick assessed the guy to be before we picked him up.
Thanks. So health, high value. So high value projected in the top 15 of the draft. Falls to the Eagles' lap at 20 overall. One of the top receivers in the class, in my opinion. So the value for that, to give up the 2/4 as we just spoke about, no one will care about that once Makai is catching balls in the paint. Bringing in touchdowns. No one's going to care about those 4th-round picks anymore, Phil. Once you see that number 9 on his chest when he takes the field, Phil, nobody's going to care about that 4th-round pick. Forget the 4th-round pick. The number 9 is where it's going to be at. The on-field production, as I said, highly productive. He was the focal point of Lincoln Riley's USC. With added value as a returner, by the way, that's a sneaky little nugget as well, because he was the primary returner at SC in 2024, returned 516 yards on 19 returns. and he continued to field returns as well in 2025, but at a lesser rate, as he was, the wide receiver one on that team. I don't think they wanted him returning quite as much as he had previous year. So in 2025, he was Jaden Mayava's favourite target with 79 receptions, 70% of which were from the slot. But he totaled up a total of 1,156 yards and 11 touchdowns. So, as I said, on-field production, that's what you want from your number one receiver. Uh, what he brings, so he brings yards after catch, and I put that in all capitals. I'll maybe publish this on the website after the pod is done, just for people to read over. But he can turn a small gain into a home run because his spatial awareness is just second to none in this draft class specifically. And he takes advantage of soft spots in coverage, which may lean into he played some reps at corner when USC had some injuries. So he's got the positional awareness of what the corners may be trying to track as a wide receiver. Intangibles. So as I said, he played some time at the corner during his freshman season, just to stand in for USC because they had some injuries in that cornerback room. But it just goes to show what kind of athlete that this guy is, because he's not the tallest. He's not your prototypical cornerback size. But despite that smaller size, he plays with that dog in him. He will go to bat for your team. He will, go for the contested catches, and he will bring that down 9 times out of 10 because he's got really good hands. He is a bit odd, but his character's a bit odd, as you've probably seen in some of his combine interviews. And on draft night, he was doing a bit of a Stevie Wonder impression. But
Yeah.
he seems like a good kid, I think.
Yeah, I think because my preparation this year was particularly poor, admittedly. But I caught snippets as much as I could, and it's almost like it wasn't until we picked him, and then I saw him, I realised it was the guy who did that combine or pre-draft interview where it's just a little bit like staring into your soul, kind of talking some weird, slightly odd stuff. But so I was like, oh god, it's him. But I remember you saying how fond you were of him, so I was like, well, I'm not going to put too much emphasis on it. But it was a little bit like, God, we've picked up a bit of a psychopath. Let's hope it's the good kind, not the bad kind. But since then, he's come out, and I think he himself has admitted that whatever he was doing was just a bit odd. And I guess in that, it's one of the biggest moments of your life. It can make you do strange things. You can think that you're doing the right thing by trying to play it cool. You end up coming off as a bit of a, like I said, staring into your soul. Sort of like you think, put some glasses on, but they're not the right type of glasses, and they just make you look like a little bit of a fool. But no, I'm really excited. You also give your Loch Lomond review, so you've been comparing draft prospects to our partner Loch Lomond's various offerings of whiskey, and you've been quite you've echoed your strong praise of him with picking the Loch Lomond 18, a premium,
Yes.
refined and polished bottle, which you and I think both have had the pleasure of trying, and thoroughly recommend as members getting out and get your discount and using that on that bad boy. But like he just seems, like I said, he's falling. So he wasn't someone that was necessarily on many fans' radar. Obviously, on how he's big board, and he doesn't pigeonhole himself into a certain group of players. He's he could be. Jeremiah Love's going to be on his board. He's obviously knowing he's not going to get him, but he wouldn't. How he's not the sort of person who's going to be thinking, well, there's no point looking at players in the top 10. He's always looking at every player, and it's great when a player like this, like you said, falls, using the capital to get up and get him. And hopefully, I'm really looking forward to seeing him and getting to camp, because I feel like the 6 and the 9 mixing in tandem, it's going to be one of those. I do wonder if there's an element of choosing number 9. Thanks to Nick Foles for giving him permission to use it, but the amount of times that Smitty's been upended, upside down in the end zone, and his 6 looks like a 9, and the 9's going to look like a 6. And when you look at those two numbers sporadically, is it me, or could there be an element of, well, if we put them like that, it's at initial glance, telling between a 6 and a 9 isn't going to be as obvious? Or I'm trying to think of the Eagles' numbering now, but it could be one of those aspects that they're trying to sort of mix up and confuse defenses in sort of like hurry up offense, trying to match up with the right person. Am I talking shit there, Mick?
You're pulling the red string, mate. Conspiracy theories and giving them the number. I like it. Though. I like it. I like it. I like how your brain works. So you're thinking from every single possible angle.
Well, I was also talking about
where can the Eagles get an advantage?
Yeah, I was also talking about the fact that it'd be cool, like for him to have gone 0. I know that was already taken, but the fact that a lemon looks like a 0, I was just having a bit of fun. It's what draft night does to you. As soon as you find the numbers, you're coming up with, like you said, you're pulling on the red string, all these conspiracy theories. But all right, well, we spent enough time on the pick itself. We said we would touch on the AJ Brown situation as well, and obviously pretty unanimous.
Just before you go on, sorry, Phil. Sorry to interrupt.
Go on.
Who's playing H.O.W.I.E in the film?
Yeah, you're right. You did to me. For some reason, I couldn't get anyone but Bradley Cooper out of my mind, just because I think that he could play. He's obviously Philly.
He'd love that. He'd love that.
I think he would get a kick out of playing that character. I also feel like, looks wise, I think he'd really try and sort of match his looks to be H.O.W.I.E. I think he's got that cool vibe. I think he can carry off the swag that people think H.O.W.I.E has, that H.O.W.I probably does have. But this image we have of H.O.W.I like walking around the Jefferson medical training. Lincoln not Lincoln Financial Field, the NovaCare. I'm just going to call it NovaCare because it's what's stuck in my brain. But you can imagine walking around the offices, walking around the offices. I feel like someone like Bradley Cooper would be a good shout. But what do you think? Have you got a guy in mind?
I was thinking maybe Steve Carell. I don't know why. Just I think it's maybe more of a looks thing. I think Steve Carell would really work. I don't know why.
I think you're probably right. Actually, look, from a looks perspective, 100% definitely better option. I was kind of just going with I don't know why. I think Bradley Cooper just popped into my head, and I just couldn't think of anybody else after that. So I was like, right, we'll just go with this one. But no, I think Steve Carell would be a good shot. I just like I said, I think Bradley Cooper would use his fandom to really bring out. He's obviously got access to H.O.W.I as well, so I reckon from a character portrayal, he'd probably know exactly how H.O.W.I operates behind closed doors as well. So I think that might be another shadow in my favour. But anyway, so as I was saying, we're gonna just touch briefly on the AJ Brown implications of the pick. It's been touched to death. Schefter's come out even as recently saying that coming out with what he expects the pick compensation to be. So he's expecting it to be a 2028 first. I'm hearing that that's because teams are just not willing to give up 2027 first, because next year's draft, as they always say, is a monster draft, which I find a little bit personally, a bit like, if we're going to give up the stature of AJ, is a 2028 first just that too far away to really feel like it's like the gap left by AJ, whether it's filled by Makai or anybody else for that matter in the interim, it feels like we're going to have to fill that gap one way or another for quite a long period of time, for a good couple of years. So I'd hope that if it was that it'd be a 2028 first and then a high pick next year. So if they don't want to give up a first, maybe they give up a second, maybe a third. If we're still talking in that ballpark figure, I've lost track of where his value is according to different people with the whole Rossini Vrabel situation. I just don't think anyone knows what the actual pick compensation is going to be. But if we're going to get a 2028 first, I can live with that, as long as maybe we get something that we can get our teeth into next year. What's your thoughts on that bit specifically, mate? The compensation side.
Yeah, if it's 2028, I kind of hate that a little bit, because it just seems so far away, and you want to improve the team now. Like, whilst we've got all these great players on defense and offense, and Vic Fangio's not going to hang around forever. Lane Johnson's not going to hang around forever. So the team's going to be having quite a bit of turnover, especially on good, experienced both players and coaches. So I want guys in the building now, not years from now. Um, Especially in a trade where you're losing such a valuable asset like AJ Brown. So I don't love if it is a 2028, but it remains to be seen. We'll see how it all pans out. I think it may end up being something like like a conditional first. It's maybe like a second, but it can become a first if AJ has like 1,500 yards or something ridiculous like that. Maybe not as high
Are you
as that,
talking
but
about on top of 2028?
no, I'm saying if it's not a 2028, say maybe it's a 2027. But they say if they're saying H.O.W.I.E, we'll give you a 2028 first, but if you want it in 2027, it's going to be a conditional second, and then try and play it off like
Yeah.
that. Which I mean, would you go for that? Would you rather a conditional second in next year's draft over a definite first in 2028?
It's an interesting proposition. I hadn't really thought about that. I think I'd probably be happier with a 2028 first than maybe like a third conditional second next year. Say like a first and a third. The third can turn into a second next year if AJ performance related stuff, so that we can kind of go, well, we can still root for AJ to do well. We know that a second is better than nothing in the interim. Although, assuming the Patriots are going to make the playoffs next year, you're going to be talking sort of pick 60-ish. So what can you get for that? When you, like I said, when you're losing a player of AJ's, the argument could be made if they trusting where Lane Johnson is right now, and Lane Johnson's given them assurances saying, yeah, I'm good for this season, probably going to be good for at least another season after that. The 2028 first then comes into play, saying, okay, well, we're looking that far afield. But yeah, I think overall, I'm with you, Mike, in the majority, saying that 2028 first doesn't feel valuable enough at this point in time to make it worthwhile doing it. But that seems to be the indication that's coming out from all the insiders, all the people that are in the know and not sleeping with the Patriots coach. So I guess we have to
Yeah,
take some of
Schefter that's
that
saying
on.
this, isn't it?
Yeah,
Schefter now,
that's what I
isn't
mean.
it?
So
Yeah, it makes you worried when it's Schefter, doesn't it? You're like, he knows something because he doesn't
he's got his
usually
fingers
just
in
go on
everything.
whims. Enough said.
Yeah. But yeah, so I think overall we're both in agreement. I don't think anyone's denying that AJ, it seems very likely that he's gone now. That the talk is almost just a matter of when, not if. So, sad to see him go, but 4 years, 4 wonderful years, 4 stellar seasons, 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win, 1,000-yard seasons pretty much every year, touchdowns all the time, the reliable go-to guy for Hurts. It's going to be a tough guy to replace, Mick. Do you think, if AJ's gone, how much of a dip do you feel that the wide receiver taking? I feel like it's a bit of an obvious question. Obviously, it takes a massive dip, but generally, if you're looking at it now, going, so assume Makai comes in and starts performing at least where we expect him. You got Devontae Smith, Hollywood Brown, Elijah Moore. Are you worried, or are you kind of confident? It's not as good, but it's more than enough.
I think it's as good as it could be for losing AJ. If we were going to definitely lose AJ, what we've got now in the wide receiver room, with how he's built over the off season, is as good as he'll get. I think in replacing him, I don't think he could have done a better job in taking one of the top wide receivers in the draft that we could actually conceivably get, because we weren't getting anywhere near Tate or Tyson. So the next best thing was Lemon there. He trades for Wicks from Green Bay, a guy that knows the offense, knows the offensive coordinator, can be our third guy on the field. Devontae Smith, who is already in the building, we expect him to take a massive step up as wide receiver one, because we know he can do it. All Eagles fans know that Devontae can do it. He just hasn't had the targets or the opportunity to show us that he can do it yet. He has had 1,000-yard seasons, but I think he can take his game to a whole other level. The Devontae Smith was just electric in college. I think And I don't think he's quite shown it yet in the NFL. I mean, it's a weird thing to say, having, he's always already had multiple 1,000-yard seasons. He caught a Super Bowl winning touchdown, more like spectacular touchdowns. He's got the toe drag swag. He's got everything. He gets separation in a phone booth. But I just think he's got another level to step up, and especially when we have an offensive coordinator that knows what the fuck he's doing, Phil. First and foremost, a guy that can install a proper passing game, a proper passing offense. We don't have that charlatan that was in the building before as the offensive passing game coordinator. He's gone. He's away to Miami to ruin their lives for the next season before he's found out again. So we've got an actual adult in the building this time, and we've built this wide receiver room that I think is just going to be really, really strong, because we've not replaced A.J. Brown with just one guy. We've replaced A.J. Brown with 3 or 4 guys. We've got multiple weapons, multiple options, and just look at our second draft pick, Eli Stowers. That's another pass catcher. That's just how he, putting more ammo, more weapons into the offense.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I dropped off for a second there, but I pretty much caught most of what you were saying and nicely segued into the second round pick number 54, Eli Stowers, the tight end from Vanderbilt. Like you said, I don't think we either expected this one, because I think after last year crying out for a tight end with Dallas Goedert for another year, admittedly Dallas came out and had a really impressive second season last year, so there's not as much concern going forward with him, but it was definitely a need. But from your perspective, Mick, did you expect the Eagles to go tight end in the second round, and did you expect them overall to go wide receiver and tight end in the first 2 picks?
No,
because I didn't.
No, I was doing mocks, Phil, where we were taking 2 offensive linemen in the first 2 rounds. that's where I was going with my mocks. But he goes for 2 weapons instead. So Howie just flips the script on all of us and makes us look daft again for the set. Well, for multiple
It's
years
amazing how
running
he
now.
manages to do that.
Yeah,
But not in a bad way.
know,
He doesn't you don't come out of feeling stupid. You just come out of it kind of going, how, like, idiot, like, why did I not think that they would do this? Like, why did he sort of manage? But I guess that's the art of Howie, is that he basically convinces the entire footballing world to look one way, and he just goes completely the opposite direction. He zigs when everyone zags. But just talk us through Eli and his abilities, what you like about him, what you don't like about him, and generally what it means working with Dallas Goedert, and how much productivity do you think we're going to get out of him in year one, given, aside from a few select individuals, tight ends generally don't produce in their first season.
Yeah. I sort of wrote it into my my Howie draft system, and I'll take you down to Eagles fit. And what I'd written was that he has a year to sit behind Goddard and learn how to block. First and foremost, he's a great receiving tight end. He's a move tight end, is what they call it, a sort of receiving tight end. But he doesn't have the blocking ability. He wasn't asked to do that a lot at Vanderbilt, and when he did, it wasn't great. So he has time to sit and learn the position, because he didn't start out as a tight end in college. Phil, he was at New Mexico with Diego Pavia. He lost the starting quarterback job to him and transferred to Vanderbilt with the offensive coordinator, and changed his position to tight end. So he's only been playing the tight end position for a couple of years. He's still got a lot to learn in that respect. So this is a perfect sort of, landing spot for this guy, so he can sit behind Goddard for a year, because Goddard's only got a 1-year contract left with the Eagles. He can sit and learn. He can add some play strength, get in the conditioning room, get on the weights, add some mass, and just soak up the position and develop. So I think, as I said, it's probably the best landing spot he probably could have had through the entire NFL, because there's so little expectation on him. I think it's a second round pick, yeah, but he's not a starter. Like, Goddard's still going to be our starter in 2026. Will he come in for, will he get snaps, yeah, I think he will see the field, but not in a significant, meaningful way. Not particularly the first half of the season, at least, because as I say, if we're playing 12 personnel and he's on the field, he's that guy's not going to be blocking because he doesn't know how to do it, and especially at the NFL level, he's not going to be asked to do it because if he is, then the play's dead effectively. But if the opposing defense knows that that guy's on the field, they know he's not going to be blocking, so they know the play before the play happens, which again is not ideal. So, but you've still got to get this guy looks. You've got get the opposing defensive coordinator thinking about him. So it's still a valuable asset to have, and I think he will see the field. But as I say, um, perfect landing spot for him, and I do like the player. So I'll just move through the sort of how he evaluation. So the high value, I think, in terms of the value, picked up a big slot receiver. Um, I think the Jack at the end as well, and the Eagles selected Stowers as the second tight end off the board. Obviously, Kenyon Sadiq went the first round, and Stowers was the second tight end off the board. It wasn't a stat tight end draft, this one, but on field production, he did have 2 good years of production at Vanderbilt. He built up a great relationship with Diego Pavia, the quarterback. As I said, that harks back to their time at New Mexico State together, along with the offensive coordinator. But in 2025, he collected 769 yards on 62 catches, with 377 of those yards coming after the catch. So he was a weapon and a very fun Vandy offense. Like Vandy were an easy team to root for in 2025. They play an SEC schedule. They come up against the big boys of college football, your Alabamas, your Georgias, and they're punching above their weight just now in that conference, and it's just so much fun. And you see Diego Pavia slip the pocket and throw the ball downfield to Stowers, and it's first down every time because this guy he's hard to bring down. He may not be much of a blocker, but it's hard to bring down once he has the ball in his hands. He becomes a ball carrier. So what he brings, he's a former quarterback, so he's got a nice feel for coverage and where he's set on routes. He's a former state champion in the high jump as well, which shows up his catch point ability. And he's got a good wingspan, providing that large catch radius that we love for tight ends that can get over the top of defenders. His athleticism allows for separation a lot of the time, and he has legit burst as well and speed. So we'll see how that translates in terms of NFL talent. And finally, I'll just go on his intangibles. So again, as I said, he started out as that quarterback at NMSU and transitioned to the tight end position. So I think that shows quite a lot of character for him to be able to, give up on a position, start a new position, and then the guy that beat him out, follow him to the next team and play for him. I think that sounds very good character.
Yeah, I like a lot of those. I think I'm also right in saying that his measurements would beat quite a few NBA players. I think LeBron, didn't have a 45.5-inch vertical jump in his combine. So I'm hearing on a fantasy podcast that I listen to. That's what they're kind of leading with. They're saying like
Wow.
his stats and his record-breaking stats would embarrass some basketball players, like in terms of the height and size and wingspan and stuff like that. So he's definitely got a lot of unique attributes that are going to be really interesting to see come across. And I think you're right, yeah, as well with the pass catching side of things. He's got a year to sit behind Goddard. Fair enough. It maybe look like that way. And we've also got a lot of coaching, and we've got new tight ends coach, we've got new passing game coordinating coach. So it's all going to be interesting to see how it all ties together. Again, there's as many question marks as maybe there is exciting points to get behind. It's a lot of the Eagles next year is going to be relying on things clicking, and it's going to be interesting to see if this one is another one of those that clicks. But like I said, an exciting pick, not on many people's radars. They're generally well received across the NFL, so it's always a good sign. And I think a lot of teams were surprised that the Eagles picked him up. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Eli comes across. Now, speaking of crazy intangibles, crazy measurements. The next guy that the Eagles picked up, so with the third round pick that they actually did end up using in this year's draft, pick 68, they picked Markel Bell. But they finally got the offensive tackle, but not until the third round. Now, this guy is huge in more ways than one. 6'9", 346 pounds. It's got 36.38 inch arms and 87.13 inch wingspan, which was the longest of any player at the combine. His wingspan matches Giannis. I'm not trying to speak his name. We all know Giannis, the basketball player for the in the NBA. Despite being 2 inches shorter, highlighting his rare length and reach. Not the tackle we had in mind. I know you weren't overly happy with this pick. I remember after you woke up on day two, the morning after day two, wasn't overly impressed with him. But just talk us through this one as well. So, absolute unit. Does it feel a bit like they've just gone for the size over the performance, or is there generally madness to it? Because he's also predominantly left tackle, so he's not really sort of looking at Lane Johnson replacement area either. Am I right in saying that, Mick?
You are correct in saying that. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And that was another part of waking up on day two and seeing the Greenard trade and seeing that we had selected Bell. I jumped off there. So, but that was so. As I was saying, it was the whole part of the waking up on day two and seeing we had taken Bell, taken Stores, traded for Greenard. I'm just like, bit flat. That's not the guy I wanted. There was still people, there were still prospects on the board at that position. We took Bell. We took Bell at 68 overall, and I just thought at the time it's a little bit rich for my money. Just as I said, there was guys on the board that I liked a lot more. I think we probably could have waited on him. Obviously, the Eagles didn't think they could have waited on him, and having already traded our fourth round picks, we didn't have, and our third round pick, we didn't have any. We were out of picks essentially, Phil, to take him with any other, unless we traded back and maybe there wasn't an opportunity. The Eagles felt the need to trust their own board and take their guy. Maybe they drafted him a little bit early, but they didn't care. They got their guy, which that's what we said about Lemon. They didn't care. They got their guy, which I understand to a degree. What were you going to say?
I think that I was going to say, I think didn't the Bell pick come before the Greenard trade? I vaguely remember thinking, right, we've got pick 98, and then the trade happened. It's like, right, that's our night done. So I went to sleep. I'm pretty sure that's how it went. So they made the pick, I'm certain, before they knew they didn't have any further picks that night. So does that change how you think about that concept of picking him earlier than they wanted to?
Not majorly, because I think H.O.W.I.E already knew the Greenard trade was happening that night. That was
Most
already
likely, yeah.
pretty much sealed with the Vikings. I think even before he picked Bell, he knew he was trading that second, third round pick. It might have not happened in that sequence live, but in H.O.W.I.'s head, or in the war room, I think it had already transpired that way. But either way, listen, I hope he becomes the next franchise tackle to play for the Eagles. I hope he plays phenomenally. I hope he becomes just this big giant, the Jolly Green Giant. This massive mammal on the the end of the Eagles' offensive line, and I have his jersey for years to come. I do hope that, Phil. I don't feel it and I don't see it. Yes, he has all these great measurables. He can keep edge defenders at a pole's length because he's got great tree trunks for arms. That just feels like the edge defenders or faster bendy guys can just get inside him because he just doesn't have the movement, the lateral movement in his feet. hands when he's reaching towards the pads as well, because he's just so tall. He's towering over a lot of smaller edge defenders, at least. So that's where my concerns come from. I think, one, he was overdrafted, and two, I just don't see him being a starting tackle. So if the upside, and this is what I'm hearing from most podcasts, like the upside is like he could be a potential swing tackle. I don't know about you. I don't draft a swing tackle in the third round. I think that's just bad value.
No, maybe they're just trying to cover themselves a little bit, saying, "Well, if it doesn't work out, we thought we could fall back to this." But you're right. You don't really spend that kind of capital on a swing tackle, and you said in your notes as well that you can't move to guard because there's no way in hell
He's too big for guard.
over a 6'9" guy.
I think someone asked us, is there any potential for him to move into guard for a year? I was like, why even ask that question? Look at the size of the guy. He can't play guard. He's crazy. He can barely play tackle. The size
It'd be like throwing a ball over a house from your back garden from a quarterback's perspective.
Yes, Jalen isn't the tallest. Jalen is not the tallest. He can barely see over the line as it is. He won't be thanking Howie for a pick like that.
So overall thoughts then. It's one of those where it's like, okay, let's see how this one works out. Trust in Howie. This is where he's using up his capital of trust from the fan base, which is like, okay, we'll give you the benefit on this one, but you've missed out. You missed out on all the top tackle talent, and you can argue that we might have maybe been able to get one, but when the Makai Lemon maybe just completely flipped the boards for the Eagles, and they went, right, we either if this happens, we just go offense, offensive weapons rather than tackle, and we'll just deal with the tackle situation later. Lane seems to be good. Landon's back for another year. We've got another year to kick things down the road, so let's just go with whatever happens. So we'll see what happens. Let's see what happens with this. But yeah, this is definitely not addressing the Lane Johnson sized elephant in the room at this moment in time. So we'll see how this one goes out. We'll quickly cover the last few picks because, as you said, the middle of the draft wasn't particularly exciting. Picking up Cole Payton, quarterback out of North Dakota State. Where have I heard quarterback from North Dakota State before? Oh yeah, Carson Wentz, 2016 number 2 overall pick. So it's slightly different, but obviously comparisons immediately getting drawn when the school comes up and the Eagles taking a quarterback. Not much water to be carried in the comparison between what happened with Hurts coming in for Wentz reversed. But I'm going to defer to you again on the quarterback side of things, because as far as I'm aware, the quarterback class was not great, and this guy being a much later round pick for quarterback, it's obviously very much a punt, but he's a dual threat quarterback, looking more of a guy who can come in and supplement, I guess. Potential to be sort of a like for like. So if you're bringing in a guy, you're not changing the scheme in game too much. Some reasonable stats, 29 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions with a 72% completion rate is definitely not to be sniffed at. I mean, it's not something to get excited and hang your hat on in any way, shape, or form. But what's your take? I think you've already indicated that you're not a fan of this pick, but trying to take that out of the equation, where do you see the Eagles going with this pick, and what's their intentions, do you think?
I think they maybe see his upside in terms of his athleticism. Maybe they see a bit of Jalen Hurts in him, that he's got a certain amount of rushing touchdowns. I think I saw from his stat line. I've got to confess, I didn't watch a lot of it FCS football this past year. I barely watched FCS football. My time is just not. I just don't have time for that sort of thing. Plus, it's not televised over here, so it's really, really difficult to sort of tune into that conference, division sort of NCAA football. Our good friend Deebs watches that sort of side of football, so maybe I should ask him a bit about Cole. He might have a better answer for me. It made me feel a little bit better about this pick, but I wasn't totally enthusiastic about it. Maybe I see what the Eagles are doing, that they want to pick up a quarterback, because we pick up a quarterback every year apparently. Harking back to last year's quarterback who we picked up, who ended up getting cut during camp.
Mm-hmm.
It felt very much like a wasted pick for me. I think I said that almost immediately after the pick came in. That's a
Kyle
waste of a
McCord.
pick. Yeah, Kyle McCord. That's right. Yeah, I mean this guy couldn't get the starting job at NC State, and so he transferred, to the FCS, and yeah, I just don't see it happening for him in Philadelphia. Even you know, just as a
Mm.
as a backup camp arm, but yeah, I can't get excited about this pick at all, Phil. Sorry.
No, I wouldn't expect you to have changed your mind. I think the fact that we picked up Dalton as a vet backup, we got McKee may not go, but I think the rumours on McKee getting picked up by another team are slowly dying, if not gone for this season at least. So you'd expect it to be sort of Hurts, McKee, and Dalton going through. So it's hard to see where Peyton's going to fit into the Eagles team. But then again, we've seen it before. Camp comes around, someone has an electric camp, and suddenly the questions start getting asked, and it's like, well, we need to get rid of one of them, and it ends up being like a shock. Dalton, like Flacco was a couple of years ago, came in and then shipped out because didn't, whatever how he ends up doing, but he ends up doing. But it's interesting to think about when we knew there was going to be a quarterback coming. I think probably around then as well potentially,
Yeah,
but with the weak
he
quarterback
keeps
class, you just don't really know.
he keeps getting compared to Taysom Hill, and
Right.
like he could maybe be a Taysom Hill. Like, do people think Taysom Hill's good? I don't. I don't want a
I
Taysom
think they like him
Taysom
from a
Hill.
gadget point of view, isn't it? I think it's. I mean, you could make the same sort of crazy outlandish things with Eli Stowers if he's a former quarterback. The Eagles are looking to put some gadget plays in the playbook for this season, but that's not going to be the case. But it's just always interesting
All the
when you make
trickery.
those kinds of the trickery. It's like we haven't really been known for our trickery, so it'll be interesting to see if something like that does come out. Okay, last two or three picks. We'll just go over very quickly because I'm conscious of the time. As I mentioned at the start, with the pick that we got back from the Cowboys trade, we picked up Cole Wisniewski, a safety at Texas Tech. We know safety is a big area of need. So for the fact that they waited until round 7, almost the last pick of the draft, to pick up Cole Wisniewski, Texas Tech safety, does this make you feel better about Reed heading down to Houston and leaving a bit of an uncertainty in that room with Makuba and
Yes.
who else have we got in there? Yeah, Epps, that's the one. It's not a great room and another area of need that's sort of not really been addressed, you can argue.
Yeah, it's not a seventh round pick. Doesn't really fill you with much confidence of seeing any starting or playing time. He does have special teams experience. We'll maybe see if he makes the team just from Michael Clay's unit, and maybe he could get some reps on special teams. I think that's his guide to making the roster, if he is to make it the roster at all. It's on special teams. He's not a starter. He's not going to be starting at safety. I don't think there's any camp battle to win in that respect. I don't think Marcus Epps is getting any sleepless nights. Yeah. It's definitely going to be Marcus Epps and Andrew Makuba heading into the season, unless we pick up someone, during camp, like a veteran off the street to come in. And
I suppose that is probably the most likely option at this point in time, picking up another camp bod. Ojulari was the guy last year, wasn't it? I think we picked up for... Not Ojulari.
Yeah. How we usually like to pick up a few guys. How we'll get the van started up and we're circling the streets of Philadelphia, just pulling guys into the van. Again. What can you do?
Mickey Morris.
Yes, Mickey Morris.
Mickey Morris, talk to me, Mick.
I like this pick. I like this one. Yay! He likes a pick. Woohoo!
Got there in the end. Probably should have led with it.
Mick, you miserable bastard! Come on, pick us up with one of these draft picks. No, I like this guy.
Georgia guy.
Georgia Bulldog. Got to get the Georgia Bulldog in there. But he provides much depth, I think, in the offensive line. We need to pick up an offensive lineman, and Micah Morris is a guy who can play both guard spots. He played both guard spots, left guard and right guard. Meaningful snaps as well, not just a few snaps here or there. Either one of them, he has played hundreds upon hundreds of snaps at both positions. So a guy with versatility up and down the line, because we don't know how Landon Dickerson's going to go this season. I'm not saying that Micah Morris can come in and be a like for Landon Dickerson. No, by no stretch of the imagination am I saying that. But in a pinch, if a guy goes down, we have depth there. If Landon goes down, if Tyler Steen goes down, that Micah can fill that gap. And he's got good measurables. He's got good arm length. He's a heavy set guy with good arm length, and that's the guard that you want. That's the kind of guard that the Eagles like to draft historically, and it's just getting meat back on the line again, baby.
Yeah, we're going to need it. I think with like I said, with the uncertainty, Georgia Bulldogs always a good pedigree to go with. So I think I'm happy with that from perspective of addressing that kind of mates. I think that softened the Bell pick from an offensive line concern point of view. At least there's some sort of depth and value piece going into the offensive line there. So I'm happy with that. But I guess before we shoot off, we definitely need to talk about one of the most interesting players of the 7th round of the draft. In fact, the international player pathway, Nigerian Uar Bernard, and I'm still trying to get the Uar Cantona chants out of my head every time someone mentions his name, because it's just like, that's what I'm going to be singing. If he becomes an absolute baller, that's what I'm going to be singing. It's like Uar Bernard. Uar Bernard, defensive tackle, international player pathway, like I said, from Nigeria. An absolute beast again. 6'4", 306 pounds, 4.6 40-yard dash, 40-inch jump. Never played football of any meaningful note. I think he took his first snaps at training camp of actually playing the position in football. I think defensive tackle is very much we'll just shove him there for now. Could be anything. Could change to something else if he excels in something. It feels very much like a very malleable ball of clay, just an absolute beast of a man who they've just seen. There's just something there, something really raw that could be crafted into something absolutely phenomenal. And another, like the Mailata version 2.0 of a guy who comes in and just absolutely takes to the NFL like a duck to water. Clint Hurt seemed absolutely buzzed on his phone call, reaching out to him. He was at the draft as well. Obviously, part of the international pathway. A big good experience for those guys coming over, knowing that they might not actually get drafted, but to sort of get that experience. But they were all buzzing for him. It's going to be a really intriguing pick, mate. Really intriguing because of just the lack of information or knowledge there isn't it. But clearly, the NFL and other teams, I think, probably feel the same as well. But the Eagles swooped in and got him. Just give me your overall thoughts on this pick, because there's just so much speculative hypotheticals in this. It's going to give a lot of talking points over the off season.
It's the fairy tale of it, Phil. Everyone loves a good story and a good fairy tale, and this guy just exemplifies that. And coming from Nigeria, never played a snap of football, drafted by one of the better franchises, shall we say, in the NFL. Making his dreams come true, for him, for his family, changing his life completely, and everyone loves that. That's a feel-good story, man. That's better than just plucking some guy out of, a list of names, because let's face it, these round seven guys are mostly darts. They'll come into the building, they'll go through camp, they'll go off somewhere, and never seen again. But this is a guy who, as you say, never played football before. He's going to learn everything there is to know. He's going to soak up all the information again, as you said, from the coach Hurt. And I love that line that he said as well. Is this now H.O.W.I.E University? I think that's underrated, by the way. Like H.O.W.I.E University, that's underrated. I've not heard anyone say that, Phil, and I love that. I think you've come up with that one. I love it.
I have to get the hashtags in.
Oh, mate, but look at the talent that's been going through our defensive line over the last couple of years. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Just like the turnaround and some of these guys, like even like you know, Jelix Hunt and Ojomo and Milton. The list goes on and on. What he's done with Jordan Davis over the last year. He had a breakout year last year and earned that new contract. So, Hart University is a new one, absolutely. But in terms of this guy that we've just signed, I can't say I know anything about him. I know I'd be a liar if I said I knew a damn thing about him. But I can't wait to follow his journey within our team, but just
That's it. Yeah.
as he did with Malata. And I think it's a great pick by the Eagle, just to think outside the box, get someone like this who's, as you say, moldable, or as much as you can mold, pure marble. Have you seen this guy, man? He is chiseled from marble. He, absolutely. Like, I need to waft a fan on me just now. Whew, this guy, man,
Yeah.
does things to me. But yeah, I can't
Yeah.
wait to see him in an Eagles uniform. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a part of it is that it on paper. If this was another team doing this move, I feel like we might be laughing at them, going, "What the hell are they doing?" Like, this guy is just a wasted pick. Fair enough, you're taking a punt, but with the Eagles and their history of molding these types of players, you think this could be another player where the other teams look at the Eagles and go, how do they just keep doing it? How do they keep finding these guys who no one's heard of and just thinking, you know what, we can mold him? Because like you said, you could just take a guy out of some college at the end of who's hoping he might get his name called out on draft night, but really it's just a camp boy who's going to get cut. Instead of going down that route, they've picked a guy where they're like, he knows he's getting cut, but we feel like, where did you lose me? You muted.
So I am. Just on, you said he's picking up a guy instead of one that's who knows he's getting cut.
Yeah, I think this is a guy where they clearly like, well, we could just pick that guy, but let's just pick someone who's probably going to get cut, but has this huge upside. And the reason why he's in the seventh round is not because he isn't a very good player or he's not one of the best at his position. We're picking him because there's just so much uncertainty around him that no one wants to take a chance. That's why we're going to get this value in a completely different area to how the rest of the draft plays out. So yeah, like, everyone loves a story. It's going to be absolutely incredible to watch, and it's going to be a name that everyone's going to be keeping an eye out. And I'm sure the tweets are always going to be like, "Ann Bernard's done this, and here's this bit," and I'm like, okay. And like you said, what Hurt University has done for the defensive line. Adding on to that, Jalen Carter's obviously looking like he's going through a similar transformation as Jordan Davis did last offseason. So similar expectations there. This could be one of the best defensive lines. The huge upside. I mean, we're talking very much hypothetical, but all these little things just make it so exciting to watch the defense as much as the offense on game day come season start. And then last but not least, pick 252 round 7, Keyshawn James Newby, the edge that we forgot about from New Mexico. We won't need to go to cover that too much, but another camp body. We've already kind of covered the Nolan Smith, Jelix Hunt, and Ebikiti side of things. So he's, it's addressing a depth piece. We'll see how that goes. But this kind of illustrates the point that we've just been making. You could just pick a guy, an edge rusher from New Mexico, or you could pick the guy who's got these absolute intangible stats around his size and his physical prowess and see if it works. But James Newby is probably the other guy that the other teams are taking a punt on, because we had that pick at the end and we're just like, we'll see how this turns out. But there's not really much behind it. So anything more to add on the draft picks? I think we're going to wrap it up there, Mick.
No.
We won't touch the UDFAs. I think we'll leave that for another time. Perhaps an article may be worthwhile doing for that one, I think. Perhaps to go into more
sounds like a
detail.
plan.
But before we do, yeah, cool. So before we do wrap up, I'm going to get your temperature check. So, and I'll give you mine as well. What we did when we were sort of straddling for things to talk about pre-draft, I got the guys that I got on the pod to give me a temper check. So somewhere between ice cold, playing it cool, lukewarm, heating up, or on fire. I think we were all sort of in the lukewarm. I think a couple of the guys were heating up, already excited even pre-draft. But um, am I back? Yeah, I'm back.
Yep.
So yeah, so out of those out of those out of those tangibles, where do you currently feel that you are as an Eagles fan going into the season at the moment? Are you hot or cold?
Yeah, I think I'm heating up now, Phil. You know that, and I think it's mostly down to
Really?
the Makai Lemon. I think it's down to the Makai Lemon pick. I'm excited for what this offense could become because just of how stagnant the offense was last year. Like just watching the same play over and over, fail every time. The curl routes. It was a terrible offense. And we're blaming Kevin Patullo for 100% of that terrible offense, which we don't have anymore. We've got new guys in the building. We've got brand new coaches. We've got brand new personnel. We're hopefully going to see an air raid offense, or hopefully going to see an air raid offense. We're going to see if Jalen can do it. So it's getting exciting. It's building up. We've got, we've brought in Makai Lemon, we've brought in Hollywood Brown, we've brought in Wicks, we've brought in, all these receivers to try and replace AJ Brown, of course. But, just more. We've drafted stores as well, just more pass catchers, more ammunition, more weapons for this offense to thrive and to get back on track from where we were last year, because it was just so devoid of any of any creativeness, any excitement. That was all gone last year, but it's coming back now, Phil. I can fucking feel it in my gut, and I'm getting excited for the season. It's only May. We're sitting in May. I can't wait for September now. I'm looking forward to all the news that comes out of camp. OTAs and mini camps, the actual training camp when it starts, just to see these guys catching the ball, in pads, out pads. Who cares? Let's go Eagles football.
Yeah, love it. My connection is struggling again, so I'm going to try and wrap this up as best I can. If I struggle too much, Mick, just take over. But as for my temperature check, I'm still kind of lukewarm. I'd like to be heating up. I just feel like there's still too much to happen. Um, I don't want to put myself on heating up or on fire, and then the AJ Brown trade capital is not good, not favourable for the Eagles. It's too far in the future. The camp stats, the Makai Lemon struggles at the start of camp. I just feel like there's just too much intangibles to get too excited just yet. But I'm definitely feeling the fire warming up beneath me. I think it'll definitely grow, and I think as soon as camp gets off and we start seeing those videos and the stats rolling, I think I'll start really getting on fire. But we've still got a long way to go, in my opinion. So not quite as excited, but I do love your optimism there, mate.
We'll get you there. We'll
Right.
get you there.
I'll be there. I just it takes me a while to get to warm up, I think. Well, thanks ever so much, everyone, for sticking with us with the technical issues and that. And I'll promise you won't hear any profanities at the start of this podcast, because I will have successfully edited them out. But if you don't, then I do apologise. I'm really much looking forward to getting into the camp side of things. I think we've got the schedule release is the next big event, which is coming out next week, I believe, Mick.
Next Wednesday.
So that's going to be one to keep an eye out for more reasons than one. Obviously, we'll probably get some drip and drabs of fixtures getting leaked. Probably some indication, maybe more Eagles are going to come one of the road teams to London, which is definitely interest from this side of the Atlantic as to whether we're going to get to see the Eagles here or whether we're going to be coming across and catching them at the link. So I'm very much looking forward to that, because if they do come over here, it's going to be one hell of a party, and I'm really looking forward to getting you and Liam and Tony hopefully down to London and having one big British and Irish Eagles party, pass Yank, and catching the birds at Wembley Stadium or Spurs. it's going to be absolutely incredible. So we're looking out for that. I think shortly after that there'll be rookie mini camps and voluntary training camps and stuff like that coming up, and then we'll start ramping up into August, July, and August. Draft season will be coming up for those that are signed up to fantasy football. Those are getting organised in the next few weeks. Once I find the time in my busy life to allocate people and start hounding people into various pots. So, but I still love that time of year, and I can't wait to start drafting. I've done my first fantasy draft, as you well know. Tapping into your knowledge when I'm really stuck for choice, but bagged myself some Jeremiah Love already. I'm really starting to get into the off-season swing of things myself, so really looking forward to it. But I think outside of that, we'll wrap up the podcast here, Mick. But thanks ever so much as always for joining me, and go Birds.
Go Birds, my friend.